It's called Jesus Messiah. He became sin who knew no sin, that we might become his righteousness. He humbled himself and buried the cross. Love so amazing, love so amazing. Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. His body the bread, his blood the wine, broken and poured out all for love. The whole earth trembled and the veil was torn. Love so amazing, love so amazing. Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. All our hope is in you. All our hope is in you. All the glory to you, God, the light of the world, Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. And he truly is Lord of all. He is Messiah, and he is our Creator. He is everything that we need. Judges chapter 1 this morning, evening, afternoon, whatever this is. Sorry, Judges chapter 1. I'm going to keep you on your toes this evening. The notes will not be up there on the screen. It'll be on that particular slide the whole time. So I would do my best to slow down and to give you the blanks that you need. So we're going into, I mentioned last week that sometimes in the book of Judges, we're going to have more of a thoughtful discussion about why things happen or some things like that. Tonight is one of those nights. So we're going to look at some thoughts, and then we're going to talk about the question that is on your notes there on that second page. And so the book of Judges. We mentioned this from the introduction. What was right in their own eyes was evil in the sight of God. Again, just because it is right in our eyes does not make it evil, does not make it right. Just because it is right in society doesn't make it right with God. Chapter 1 of Judges, it highlights the importance of faithfulness, obedience, and dependence on God. We have seen that thus far. We ended last week with that. They were faithful, they were obedient, they were dependent on God, and because of that, victories came. Victories are directly related to our dependence and obedience to God, and then we will see in the rest of the chapter that the opposite is true as well. Failures then are directly related to our disobedience to God and our, I'm going to use this word, non-dependence on Him, or our dependence on other things besides God. Disregarding God's instructions will lead to unfinished tasks and unfulfilled promises. When we do not obey God, yes, God has promised this. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. When we don't trust God and obey Him, then we cannot have the blessings that He has promised us. We want the promises of God, all of these blessings, but want to do it our way. We're going to see that in the last part of Judges chapter 1. All of the turmoil in the book of Judges stems from their decisions in the first chapter, and we're going to see tonight the decisions that they make in the end of chapter 1. We will see from the rest of the book what happens because of their decisions tonight. Not tonight's decisions, but the decisions that we will look at tonight. Verses 22 through 26. Remember, we just went through a whole bunch of verses. This tribe conquered these people. This tribe did this. This tribe did that. Now, verse 22. In the house of Joseph, they also went up against Bethel, and the Lord was with them. And the house of Joseph sent to describe Bethel. Now, the name of the city before was Luz. And the spies saw a man come forth out of the city, and they said unto him, Show us, we pray thee, the entrance into the city, and we will show thee mercy. When he showed them the entrance into the city, they smote the city with the edge of the sword, but they let go the man and all his family. And the man went into the land of the Hittites and built a city, and called the name thereof Luz, which is the name thereof unto this day. Before we get into the notes there from commentaries and history, this spy and his family must have been a pretty wealthy family and large family for them to start a whole nother city after being saved. And so keep that in mind. And so we're going to look at this thought, the start of a downward spiral. And so maybe, I'm not saying that Joseph and his clan did what was wrong, but maybe when people were looking at them and they will see the more tribes after this, that maybe they're looking at Joseph and think, well, he didn't drive all the people out. He didn't kill all of the people. Maybe I can get away with some things. For instance, my sister, when we were young, really young, I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I took the toothpaste, I opened the top, I turned on the water, and I shoved the toothpaste tube under the water, and just filling up with water. There was foam everywhere. And my dad and my mom came in and said, Stephen, what are you doing? I said, well, I saw Leah do that. And she's like, what? And mom and dad, of course, got onto my sister at the first because she was doing something that caused her little brother to watch it. Oh, that must be right. But what I did not notice, and what she explained to my mom and dad, is that she would put her finger over the tube like this and just wash off all the excess toothpaste. I didn't notice that finger that was there. So I saw something, said, oh, if it's good enough for Leah, it must be good enough for me. Look at all those bubbles. That's kind of fun. Maybe the other tribes are looking at Joseph from afar off and think, wow, if he can get away with this, maybe I can too. But it says in verse number 22, 5 words that make a huge difference. The Lord was with them. It wasn't like it was their own plan. It wasn't like it was just, hey, Joseph says, I'm going to do my own thing. The Lord's plan, the Lord was with them. But I added this. Just because you have the power of God now doesn't mean you will automatically have his power later on. We cannot fight today's battles. I mentioned this last week. We can't fight today's battles with yesterday's power, yesterday's strength. It must be new every single day. So the question is this: did the spies make an agreement they shouldn't have? Well, I should say the other way. Did Joseph make an agreement they should not have? I think that it was okay because it's prefaced with the Lord was with them, but maybe should they have? I think it was okay. It reminds me of the book of, or when they were going to Jericho, and they say Rahab and all of her clan in Hebrews chapter 11, who is mentioned in that chapter of faith, where Rahab is. So God was not against the spies for saving Rahab. I don't think God was against the tribe of Joseph or his clan for saving those spies. Mercy is a powerful tool that we have to reach the world for Christ. The gospel is about mercy. There's a song about, it says, mercy, mercy, God's loving mercy, that saved you and me. Although we should have had justice, God showed us mercy. It's a big thing for us to be able to go to somebody and say, hey, you deserve hell. I was teaching kids in VBS, and the first part of the message was called bad news. So the bad news, kids, is that you a sinner, a sinner. You are wicked. You have done some bad things. I said, how many of you have done that? They're like, oh yeah, I've done this and this and this. I'm like, oh, don't tell me all that you've done, but you were sinners. And I said, guess what? Because you have sinned, you deserve to go to hell. They're like, what? I'm like, that's bad news. I said, it's terrible news. I said, but we don't end it with the bad news. We end it with the good news that you don't have to go. Yes, you deserve to go, but God is willing to give you mercy. And that's what the gospel is. It's about mercy. Verses number 27 through 33. And now we get into the bad stuff, where they just want to be hard-headed. They want to do their own thing. Verse number 27, neither did Manasseh drive out the inhabitants of Bethshean and her towns, nor Tanakh and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Dor in her towns, nor the inhabitants of Ibleam and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Megiddo and her towns, but the Canaanites would dwell in that land. Verse 28, and it came to pass, when Israel was strong, and they put the Canaanites to tribute, and did not utterly drive them out. 29, neither did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites that dwelt in Gezer, but the Canaanites dwelt in Gezer among them. Neither did Zebulun drive out the inhabitants of Kitron, nor the inhabitants of Nahalah, but the Canaanites dwelt among them and became tributaries. Neither did Asher drive out the inhabitants of Akko, nor the inhabitants of Zidon, nor of Alab, nor of Akzib, nor of Helba, nor of Aphik, nor of Rehob. But the Asherites dwelt among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, but they did not drive them out. Verse 33. Neither did Naphtali drive out the inhabitants of Bethshemesh, nor the inhabitants of Bethanah, but he dwelt among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land. Nevertheless, the inhabitants of Bethshemesh and of Bethanah became tributaries unto them. Does that sound like they did what God wanted them to do? Absolutely not. Do you think? Now, we are reading it verse by verse. I'm assuming that it did not all happen at the same time. Do you think it was easier for the last person to make that decision? Was it easier for them to make that decision than the first person? Well, sure. Well, my brother's tribe did okay. They didn't do it. They didn't do it. I'm not the only one. It's just like when you're driving down the road. It's easier to go 10 mile an hour over or 15 over if everybody else is. And you say to yourself, surely the police won't stop all of us. No, but he may stop one of the 10 or 15. It's easier to do that. Here, 5 tribes decided that their plan was better than God's plan. What was God's plan? Drive them out. Utterly destroy them. I don't want them living with you. Verse 27 says this. But the Canaanites would dwell in that land, would live there. So I asked this question on the left side here, what's the big deal? What was the big deal? Why would God make such a big deal? And we will see that in chapter 2, that he made such a big deal when they did not throw them out. Did those tribes still possess or own that land? They owned it. It was theirs because they conquered it. They just didn't take the people out. You see what I'm saying? So they are still, in their minds, the head of them. It's their land. But just like if we allow just a few people to come in, next thing we know, we are in trouble. That's, for instance, there are 3 kids and 2 adults in our house, in our family. Let's say that we run the family like a democracy. We do not, right? We don't get a vote. If we did, who would be in charge? The kids or the adults? Why? Because there's 3 or 2. Do the kids pay for the bills, yes or no? No. Is that their house, yes or no? No. So it's our land, our house, but we don't make the rules. That is what we're going to see, what's going to happen. All right. So when Israel was strong, that is in verse number 28. When Israel was strong, that's when they decided to make some poor decisions. Satan will make us think that we are strong enough without doing God's plan. We will see that in the last judge as well, Samson. Remember, I'm really going to preach a lot in the other chapters as before I get to them. Remember when Samson, Delilah cut his hair, and then Delilah said, "Hey, Samson, Samson, the Philistines be upon us." And the Bible says that he woke up and wished not that the Lord, the Holy Spirit, was not with them. He thought he could act like he did every other time, but guess what? He could not. Why? Because he thought he had the strength. He was going with his own strength, not the power of God. I wrote this. This is from a verse. Obviously, I should put it in quotes. A little leaven left the whole lump. Anybody bake bread? It don't take much. I don't make bread. It doesn't take much, does it? There's a little bit of yeast, a little bit of leaven, and it does the whole bunch. The small foxes spoil the vine. We had some termites at our house. Small little creatures can make such a huge mess. Satan is patient in his attacks. It's amazing how long he will wait. He has the long game in mind. He will make you think that everything is fine, when in reality, everything is in a downward spiral. What did he tell Adam and Eve? Oh, Eve, everything's fine. Everything is beautiful. And when I read that passage, I think about billboards. We don't have a lot of billboards here. If you go down, I guess back at home in Georgia, there are billboards every other mile, it seems like. Tons of billboards. I don't really drive the interstate here much. There's a lot of billboards on roads. I didn't think so. But there's billboards, right? What's the billboards meant to do? Make you wreck. No, it's meant to make it, oh, I want that. There's a song, there's a at the shop, a radio station that is played. I'm sorry, no, it was at my other work. We play the radio every day, and this crazy commercial song, jingle. Thank you, a jingle. And me and the other guys, like, this is the most horrible jingle out there. We hate it. It was, but guess what? I remembered it and I sang it. That's the idea. He wants everything to make it look good. Oh, look at this thing. Oh, isn't this beautiful? It's beautiful. But you do not know that you are being lured into something that you should not be. Instead of driving them out, they use them for money instead. We'll just make them tributaries. I'm going to alter God's plan. They're not really inhabitants, but we'll just use them to get money from them. Money, materialism, made them disregard God's commandments. And then it says here that they Naphtali, and those who Naphtali should have taken out, dwelt among them. Does this remind you of Lot? When Abraham and Lot, and Abraham said, Lot, you choose. He saw Sodom and Gomorrah. He first fixed his eyes on there. Then he got closer and closer and closer. Then he was among them. It's one thing to not kick them out. It's one thing not to drive them out. It's a whole nother thing to be among them. Be careful who you align and associate with. Verses 34 through 36, we'll come back to the top of that other page. It says this, and the Amorites forced the children of Dan into the mountain, for they would not suffer them to come down to the valley. So now they went from not kicking people out to now Dan couldn't even conquer his. They said, you ain't coming here. And then verse number 35, but the Amorites would dwell in Mount Heres and in Ajalon and Shalbim. Yet the hand of the house of Joseph prevailed, so they became tributaries. And the coast of the Amorites was from the going up to Akrabim, from the rock and upward. Disregarding God's plans will, not maybe, it will result in defeat. You don't do it God's way, you will be defeated. It doesn't matter how strong you think you are or how strong you are. It doesn't matter how long you've been saved or how many times you go to church. If you don't do it God's way, then you will face defeat. Why is that? Because Satan is more powerful than we are. Maybe these tribes thought, well, you don't understand. Look where we came from. Look at who we conquered. Look at all of these things. Surely we are strong. No, Satan is always stronger than us. Obedience is always the key to success. We simply must obey God's plan. So here's the question, the back and forth, some thoughts here. Why would God tell them to drive them out, to drive out the inhabitants? Or let me rephrase it this way. Why shouldn't the inhabitants stay? I would give you an illustration. While you think about that, I would give you an illustration. I was talking to one of our teenagers years ago when we were in Florida. And this particular teenager had a very sweet heart, always saw the positive in everybody. And people took advantage of that because they were like, oh, I could take advantage of her money, of this and that. She always saw everything positive. And she said, and she went to this party one day, and I said, you probably shouldn't go. She said, no, it'd be okay. I just want to help them. I said, no offense to you and how much you love God and the Bible. You ain't going to help them at that party at all. I said, you're probably going to be affected more than you affect them. No. I believe in them. I said, I'm glad you do, but I don't trust their flesh. The next day I talked to her and I said, so how did it go? She said, yeah, I called my mom to come pick me up not long after I got there. And many times I would say, you are hanging out with the wrong friend, the wrong boy, whatever. I know, but I'm trying to help him. You don't date somebody to help them. You don't marry somebody to change them. That's not how it works. So she thought to herself, well, maybe I can keep them close so that I can help them. So that's just a reason. So what are some reasons why you think God says, hey, get them out? Don't let them stay. Don't let them stick around. Or the flip side is, what would be the great harm in them sticking around with the Israelites? Okay? So bad influence. Bad influence. So God understood, I believe, that if they stuck around, I mentioned this to the teens, getting drunk is not one of my weaknesses. It just isn't. I have a whole bunch of other weaknesses, but that's not one. I could probably walk into a bar, a liquor store. I could probably sit down at the bar, and I won't be like, oh, I need a drink now. That's not my weakness. There are many people in this world and Christians who could not do such things. So what should that Christian do if Satan will attack them, or if their weakness is drunkenness? What should they not do? Walk in. Stay away. You see what I'm saying? So, but if I am constantly looking at, as I'm walking by it, what will eventually happen, you think? Well, it'd be okay. I wonder if I can. It's a constant reminder. And Satan uses the, as it says in 1 John, the lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, the pride of life. And so God didn't want that bad influence to be there and for them to every day be looking at those things. Now, speaking of bad influence, when those people were there, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the ites that should not be there, do you think those inhabitants started automatically worshiping God and doing the lifestyle of the Jews? No. No way, no how. They lived their own life, just like when the Israelites was in Goshen in Egypt. They didn't follow Pharaoh and their gods. They still worship their God, even though they lived in their land, standing with them. So now they're going to be walking by thinking, huh, that's a different practice. That's a different religion. Huh, that's interesting. And that is why we have churches today. I was watching a 3-hour debate with two Christians, and I use that term loosely. One Christian does not believe, one Christian believes that same-sex marriage is sin. The other Christian does not. I use that Christian very loosely. And so I'm watching this debate. I never thought in my lifetime that my kids would face it this much, like growing up in it. So no wonder churches and Christians and pastors are falling into a trap of it must be okay, and they actually take the Bible and prove why they believe what they believe. It's because this generation and previous generation, we have seen it, we've watched it, we have let it come in, we see it on TV, on movies, all these things. It just becomes very commonplace. The more we see it, the more we see it, the more we see it, the more we say, oh, what's the big deal? Just like, how many of you have ever worked in a place that co-workers or bosses or whoever have filthy mouths, right? How many of you have thought to yourself, or you said, well, I don't talk like that, but the more you hear it, you may not ever say it, you may not ever say it, but then all of a sudden you're like, oh boy, I can't believe I wanted to say that, or I almost said, oh boy, I can't believe I almost said that. What in the world, right? Because you keep on hearing it. Same thing, that's the bad influence. Like God said, I don't want you anything around that, all right? Why else? I mean, she covered a lot with that. Bad influence. Why else did God say, no, get it out? I know it's Wednesday in the middle of the week and your brains are dead. I get that. Okay, justifying. I like it. They justify. Wait a minute. It must be okay. It must be okay. It must be right. It goes back to where it says that they did right in their own eyes. If we can justify our actions, it may not be right, but we feel good, right? If we can even find a verse that halfway supports it, oh, we feel good about ourselves. If we can say, no, the Bible doesn't say that, but the Holy Spirit says, that's why I said on something the other day, they will never contradict each other. And we start justifying, and God did not want the Israelites to start making false justifications and excuses of why they did what they did. He wanted solely out, 100%. I don't want any temptation or reason for you or chances for you to justify why you did what you did. Same thing happened in Exodus with the golden calf. Who they tried to justify it, right? Oh no, what happened? We threw this gold in and poof, out came a. No, that's not what happened. Or, my mind just went poof. Man, literally, like it just left me. Wowzers. Saul. Saul did the same thing. He tried to justify why he sinned. Well, it's the people. I was going to sacrifice to God. I was going to do this. It's because he did not get rid of everything that God said to get rid of. Anyone else? Go, sure. Separate. I want you to look differently, talk differently. I want you to not mingle with the two. Now, Some people, this is off topic here a little bit. Some people, some Christians believe that we must do the exact same thing now. I'm going to say this: Israel and the church, they're not the same. The promises that God gave to Israel does not mean that it's the promises that he gave to the church, okay? So just because God said, I don't want you to mingle with them, inhabit them, I don't want you fellowshipping with them at all, kick them out, does not mean a Christian these days should say, I'm isolated from the world, okay? We still have to be in the world, but not of the world. We can still reach the world for Christ. But he is making a point here. He's saying, I want you to be totally separate so that even in geography, when people look here, they know this is God's land, God's people, righteous people, God's area. There's nothing in there that should not be in there or that I do not want in there. I want totally separate from what it was. Anyone else? What would be the big, that covers a lot with her bad influence. I would not have taken that answer upstairs to the teens. I would say, give me specific things that I'm down on the board. But I believe that those three things sum up everything. God said, no, I want you to not even think about it. I want it totally out of your life. But that's not what happened at all. In chapter 2, we're going to see that he's going to say, why didn't you do this? Why are you doing? And hence the reason. In chapter 3 will come around, and God said, fine. I'm going to leave these people here who you did not cast out. And I'm going to put them, making them to be a thorn in your side to test you and to prove you. Hence the reason why they were slaves, and then a deliverer came, enslaved again, back and forth, because it was their fault. Now, remember I said the very first lesson, the people in Judges 2, 3, and 4, are they the same people in the Samson era? No, by no stretch of the imagination. So just because these people in chapter 1 did not do their job, guess what happens to their children, grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, great-great-great, all those? It literally had an impact over many generations because of what has happened here. In fact, don't mention anything out loud. Just think about history of our country. Has decisions in our country, are we paying the price of it even today for some things that were decided a long time ago? Well, absolutely we are. Absolutely. I don't care. It could be political. It could be social. It could be financial. It could be all kinds of things. Yeah. But just because the people in Judges 1 messed up, does that mean that the people in Judges 20 had to mess up? No. It's always a personal choice. So next week we're going to look at God's plan. He always has a plan for our disobedience. So what does he plan to do when we disobey? All the other turmoil, again, in the book of Judges stems from their decision in this first chapter. Disregarding God's instructions will lead to unfinished tasks and unfulfilled promises. That's what chapter 1 is all about. Unfulfilled tasks, therefore unfulfilled promises. Let's pray. God, thank you for all you've given us. Thank you for the time to come and worship you. I do pray that we can see and we know that there are blessings, there are promises waiting for us that you want to give us, but it has to be the way you want us to get them. Our obedience to you. We thank you for your mercy, for your love, for your forgiveness. But help us to follow you and to have the victories in our lives through you and don't not try to do it ourselves. We love you. I pray. Amen. See you guys on Sunday and then a week from Sunday.